Hello, this is Sarah Campbell, Mother Mystic and the In-Between. I feel a little bit up in my crown chakra today, a little spacey, because I can't believe I'm recording my first episode of my podcast. And uh, it's exciting, it's a little nerve-wracking. Um, but at the end of the day, you know, all I can think about is how much I've been wanting to share my story, and I've just kind of been waiting for other people to come to me. And, I've been on a podcast, I've been interviewed, I've had a couple others that have wanted to interview me and it didn't work out. And I just started thinking, why am I, why am I waiting for other people? Like, I'll just do it myself. So we'll see what happens, y'all. But if you are here, you might be a mother, so you might be a parent, I should say, and you may know the intense feeling that is the sacred primal love for your child, while also understanding what it means to be filled fueled to filled with just the most intense rage at times and overstimulation, I guess. You might be somebody who has experienced wild grief, just the most profound grief. I mean, I guess I have to say grief in itself, no matter what type, is going to be pretty profound and wild and intense. You might be missing somebody right now. You might be so ripped open and so raw and so wounded right now because you're grieving somebody. That might be why you're here. You might be here because you are in recovery or in the throes of addiction. Uh, you might be trying to claw your way out of the darkest hole because of some of these things. Uh, and you might be going through a spiritual awakening. Some of you might be going through a spiritual awakening, and that's why you're here. You're having experiences that are happening in the midst of all of this other chaos. And if you're experiencing all of those things at once, you might be me. And that's why I've created this podcast, because I found that through the last few years of my life, all I wanted more than anything was to feel understood, was to feel seen, to feel like I had connection and that I wasn't alone. And I've found that since I've started, doing readings, I am a intuitive psychic medium and Reiki practitioner. And I started, going on social media. I started that about a year ago. And when I started that, I was finding people that I connected with, that I resonated with. And it really helped me. I had to, more than anything, I really had to get the strength to connect with myself because I was so isolated. But yeah, so I'm going to get into all of this. And I really don't have a structure for this first episode. I really just wanted to kind of introduce myself and let you know why I'm doing this podcast, who I am, what I mean by mother mystic and the in between, and kind of all those things I said prior. That's what I mean by the in between. I am a mother first, I'm a mystic second. I do the intuition stuff. I do the readings. I channel spirit and guides. I do energy work. But when I'm not doing that, I'm a mother. I am taking care of a 6 and 2-year-old. I am a stay-at-home mom. Uh, my awakening happened simultaneously while I was grieving my father-in-law and about to have our second baby. So both death and birth were happening like at the same time, not literally, but you know what I mean? And that kind of like connection of those two portals ripped the veil for me. It cracked me wide open to experience the most intense grief had ever experienced at that point. And, obviously the most love for my children. And something about that really ripped me open. And if you're listening to this right now, you might know what I'm talking about. You know, again, maybe it's the grief that you're here for. Maybe it's the parenthood. Maybe it's, there's something about listening to somebody else who's went through, being wounded severely and coming out the other end that is just very helpful, right? Um, but for some of you, maybe your spiritual awakening was born from that, or maybe you had it sooner. I would love to hear from you guys because I've always been really interested in this stuff. I've always been very intrigued, but I was always kind of on the outside. I always considered myself sensitive. I would have things like dreams that felt kind of profound, maybe even a visitation of spirits, but you never know, right? You just never know, especially when you're younger. And my mom got me into this stuff. She really got me into, first of all, John Edward. I was 14 years old, and my sister and I did one of our, weekend runs to the mall, as one did back in the day. And I remember her telling me, when you go to Barnes and Noble, I want you to pick up a book by John Edward. And I was like, okay, mom, who is this person? I remember her writing it down on a piece of paper. And I went and got the book. I was about 14 years old, and I opened the book, and my life, I guess I should say, from there on forward was pretty much changed. And I had no idea what was about to happen. It was the catalyst for, you know, diving down a deep hole of fascination, of mystery, of love, of connection, especially with my mom. My mom, I like to consider the first mother mystic. and and yeah, it was very fascinating, but it was always just kind of on the outskirts. I'd go see mediums, psychics, and they would tell me I was intuitive, but usually it was focused on other things. And so it wasn't until I was in my, mid early 30s that things started to really ramp up for me. I became pregnant with our second child, and my father in law passed away. And at that point, I had not really lost anybody that I was really close with. I had lost, as being the youngest in the family, my grandparents fairly early on. And yes, it was sad, but to be honest, I hadn't really had that strong of a bond with anybody at that point. At that young of an age, I remember being more sad for my mom or my dad for their loss than for myself. And my father-in-law was such an amazing man. He was like the really a beautiful example of just a provider, and he was just funny and goofy and loving, and I had been lucky enough to know him for 15 years, and he tragically passed away doing what he loves, snowmobiling. And I was probably 5 or 6 months pregnant by then, 5 months maybe. And yeah, everything just kind of changed. I started to have, you know, experiences, and I'll probably dive more into that stuff as I go on in the podcast. But right now, I just kind of wanted to let you know what the catalyst was. In the last 3 years, just to give you a summary, I have lost my father in law. I have lost a very close family friend who was kind of like a brother to me. My father died. My mother had strokes and now has dementia. So that's like the long goodbye. So I've been kind of grieving her quite a bit. Uh, and then my brother died just this last October. So on top of that, we moved 4 hours away from anyone I ever really knew. Um, and so my support system was kind of ripped away. And and so dealing with, caretaking for your children while you're also caretaking for your parents is a wild experience, especially when your kids are very little. And there's a lot of similarities with that. It was really, really bizarre and very hard. And my husband was working long hours, on the trains. I was, alone a lot with my kids, and it was extremely lonely. So I remember grabbing a deck of tarot cards and just started kind of like shuffling them and kind of like asking things or thinking things and finding that, you know, s- stuff was coming out that I resonated with. It was helpful. And then I just, for fun, right? Because I I need a connection. At this point, I really had no one else to talk to other than a 6 and 2-year-old and the dead or spirit. So I would call my friends on the phone and say, "Hey, you want me to, do a reading for you?" And I was finding out that they were having like profound visceral experiences, like people were crying, thanking me. And I was like, wow, this is something, like something's happening here. And and then I had a medium read me and tell me, yeah, I see you walking around your home that you're going to have someday. You're recording yourself, talking to people on social media, and you're giving readings. And I thought, that's crazy. There's no way. But I really trusted this medium. She was a beautiful soul. She had brought through my father in law to my husband and I. And my husband was, a pretty healthy skeptic. And we were just beside ourselves in tears when she brought him through because she did it so well and knew things that obviously nobody else would knew. She described his personality. So, yeah. So to hear her say that, I was like, okay, maybe there's something to this. And all this time later, sitting here today, I am a psychic medium. That's, how I describe myself from my position and what I do for work. And and then I'm on social media. I have 15.7 thousand followers on TikTok. What? And it's been in a journey. And so I'm going to share, more of this journey with you guys from my awakening to that. And in that time frame, I lost my dad. I had relationships just crumble to the ground, just relationships that I thought would never end. Some of them I had even started within my awakening thinking I found my people, and then those would kind of, crumble and more people would die, and then, it was almost like never ending, and I thought, I can't breathe. Um and and yeah, I just kept asking spirit for signs. And finally, one day, I remember kind of waking up and like the air felt clearer and like thinner or something. It just felt like I wasn't in this muddled water. And I thought I was looking around and I was like, wow, the trees are so beautiful and my home is really cute and I have these beautiful kids. And up until that point, it was taking everything I could just to get in the shower. Like, I had to root myself on. I had to be like, "Sarah, you're gonna kill it today. You're gonna take that shower, and you're gonna feed your kids, and you might go back to bed, but that's okay." And it was a lot like that because when you're grieving, when you're experiencing stress and overwhelm and postpartum, yeah, it gets pretty wild, and in all of that, I became very addicted to, opioids. It started with my scoliosis and it rapidly turned into something else. And I, went to detox and I had just the most wild spiritual experiences doing that too during that time. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about. I just want to talk about the rawness of grief and trauma and isolation and motherhood and also how spiritual awakenings and motherhood and parenthood like they kind of coincide in these really beautiful kind of bizarre magical ways. Like my guides once told me, your children are your altar. They are part of your altar. And when I look at my altar, I have my sage, right? I have my tarot cards and my oracle cards and my crystals, and all of that is there for messages, for healing, for connection. So they were telling me, your children, they're here to help you connect to us. They they are that bridge for you. And that was a really profound that was very profound for me to realize because I would get so overstimulated. I mean, I was I mean, I'm sure there's moms listening to this, parents listening to this that can understand when you just have that moment where you go, man, I really sucked in that moment as a parent, just maybe snapping on your kids or not wanting to pay attention. Mom, look at me, mom, mom, mom. And you're like, oh, stop touching me. Stop, asking for me. Just give me some quiet. And then you realize these beautiful things just, they love you and they want your attention. And, I'd have those moments of feeling bad for that. And one thing I learned was giving myself grace for that because it's human, but also that if I allowed myself to get out of my own head and actually listen to my kid, sometimes my child would have a message for me. There was a time that I was meditating outside and I was just asking my spirit guides, like, is this what I'm meant to do? It was right in the middle of my spiritual awakening. I was having visions and downloads, and spirits were coming to me. And I was just, I had my heart chakra stone and I was like, what am I meant to do? And, I come back in from that meditation, and my 6-year-old had no idea what I was doing outside. At this point, she didn't know anything about crystals and chakras and any of this stuff. And she comes up to me and she puts a sticker right on my heart and she says, Mama, that's for following your heart. And I thought, wow, my guides just spoke through her. She just gave me this profound message of, of validation and encouragement. And it was just her beautiful little soul, wanting to do something in her mind sweet for her mom, connect with her mom. And she just went about her day. And I'm just sitting there kind of in shock, like, wow. And it's those things, if you take a moment and listen to, you can get really amazing messages from your loved ones and from your guides. I hear that a lot. How do I connect with my loved ones? How do I connect with spirit? And a lot of times I want to say, just pay attention. It doesn't have to be a profound vision. I understand the want for that. And I do, because I've had them and then I've had that have it go away. I get that. But they'll do things like angel numbers on the clock, maybe seeing a cardinal and messages that come through your children. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about all of this. I think I'm going to just consider this my first episode. Yeah. I don't know how much more you guys want to hear from me. You guys let me know. I am going to talk about it all. I'm going to talk about the rawness of losing people you love, the spectrum from the deepest love you can feel to the most gut wrenching pain imaginable, and addiction and recovery and shame and guilt and love and spiritual awakening. I'm going to talk about it all. And I hope that you'll go on this journey with me. Please let me know in the comments if you listened, if you resonated with anything, what you have questions about, what you're interested in hearing about. I think the next time I get on, I'll talk about, what a spiritual awakening is maybe to me, and I guess more of my experience and what I've learned communicating with spirit while I'm grieving and going through addiction and recovery and being a mom. Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for, if you've listened from start to finish, God bless you. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'll see you in episode 2.